Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about sound devices, all right? Which these are kind of like figurative language in that you see them a lot in poetry, especially in song lyrics, things like that. But instead of kind of playing around with the meaning of words, they play around with the sound of words, okay? So we're going to talk about two really common types of sound devices here, and we'll start seeing those in poetry very soon. All right, so let's take a look at our first one. All right, so alliteration is our first sound device that we're going to learn about. Okay, in alliteration, the same sound is used at the beginning of two or more words that are located near each other in the poem. Okay, and it won't always be poem where you see them. All right, but that'll be very common. All right, so the beginning. Excuse my terrible writing there. All right, so a few examples. We have Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse, right? Alliteration is very common all over the place. Apt alliteration's artful aid. We can have it with vowels, not just consonants. All right, here are a few more examples. The Baron was busy as a bee. Notice how we have that B sound repeating in three of our words. The dog was dead as a doornail. Again, D, D, D. Gary gathered the garbage, our G sound. Paula planted the petunias in the pot, lots of peas, and lazy lizards lying like lumps. Now, notice that they don't all have to be right next to each other. Like the Baron was busy as a bee. I have was, as together that, we hear all the sounds kind of right next to each other, right? If we have, the Baron was busy as a bee, and then 5 lines later I use another bee, that's not part of the alliteration. They have to be kind of close to each other, okay? They don't have to be right next to each other. Now, let's look at some examples within a longer passage. And as we're going to go through this, we're going to pause and circle our alliteration. So this is a short poem called The Tooth. All right, I jiggled it, jaggled it, jostled it. I pushed and pulled and poked it. But as soon as I stopped and left it alone, the tooth came out on its very own. Okay, now take a second and kind of think to yourself, what are some repeated sounds I see here? Right? Now, I see jiggled, jaggled, and jostled. I see those J's, and then the P's here, okay? So I'm going to circle those because I have that repeating J and P sound, okay? Now, just a quick reminder before we move on from this. We're talking about how something sounds, not how it's spelled. So remember, English can be a little weird sometimes, all right? And sometimes we'll see words that are spelled differently, but they still have the same sounds in them, okay? For example, like the funny phone, okay? So notice they both start with an F sound, all right, but my second word, phone, begins with a PH, not an F, okay? But it's still alliteration because it's still the same sound. So I'm looking for repeated sounds, not just letters, okay? All right, so let's look at the second type of figurative language I want to talk about here, and that is repetition. And this is hopefully a word that we already know, but we'll talk about why we use repetition so much. So repetition is when a writer repeats words, phrases, or lines, okay? Now, again, hopefully we know what that word repetition is, but the effect is what is important, okay? So when we use repetition, when we repeat something over and over, it shows us that the word, phrase, or line is being emphasized. And emphasize means we're showing that's important. Okay, so when I keep repeating something, that means it's important. That means that that word is meant to kind of stick in our head there. Okay, so let's look at an example. And again, as we're reading this, I want you to think about what's being repeated, okay, and why. All right. So, lying thinking last night how to find my soul a home, where water is not thirsty and bread loaf is not stone. I came up with one thing, and I don't believe I'm wrong, that nobody but nobody can make it out here alone. Alone, all alone, nobody but nobody can make it out here alone. There are some millionaires with money they can't use, their wives run around like banshees, their children sing the blues. They've got expensive doctors to cure their hearts of stone, but nobody, no nobody, can make it out here alone. Alone, all alone. Nobody but nobody can make it out here alone. So take a second and think about what line is being repeated. Okay. Now, what I noticed here, I noticed that they're repeating this alone, all alone. Nobody but nobody can make it out here alone. We see it many times at the passage. We got it again here, okay? So that is supposed to stick out in our heads. That's the core message, the core idea of this poem, all right? So they want us to remember that, not necessarily remember, all the other information they give us. They want these lines to stick out in our head, okay? So we're going to be talking about sound devices and figurative language all together, some more sound devices in class, but hopefully this gave you a little introduction to a couple of them.